So this is a chat between Gavin Newsom and Charlie Kirk, who, by the way, is a fantastic debater, and he definitely gets in his 10,000 hours and reps in doing so. He knows his subject. Gavin Newsom, on the other hand, is a slick, weaselly, oily, unctuous weasel who has, not single-handedly, but close, destroyed the state that I used to live in. So I have some strong thoughts on these subjects.
And here we go.
California, your favorite state.
It is my, ooh, this thing's falling. It is my favorite state in the union. You're doing such a great job here, by the way. I'm honored to be on the show. Thank you.
Kabam, because everybody knows that California, as me being from there, it isn't doing so well.
And, you were just down at USC?
I was at USC yesterday, drew a big crowd.
By the way, I knew you were at USC early because my niece, who's graduating.
She was the one with the MAGA hat on.
She was, by the way, I do have to watch. But she was down there and she was like,
again,
she said,
you never know. These kids are going to the right.
I'm aware. She said, this crowd's crazy. And the only reason she said she would have said.
Charlie's laying the groundwork to let Gavin know that that he's not going to just roll over and supplicate himself to him. Just little zingers.
Otherwise, but she knew you were coming on. The worst part, though, Charlie, no BS, true story. Literally last night, trying to put my son to bed. He's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is,
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is
Yes, Gavin Newsom canceled school for 2 years. Now he's trying to rehabilitate his image by inviting somebody like Charlie Kirk on. Kids in California were not able to play sports. They lost their eligibility to do so as the years progressed. They weren't able to learn. They were forced to wear masks, which for younger kids prevented them from learning facial signals. This man committed an act of great evil under the guise of safety. Whenever they're trying to tell you about safety and preventing you from making your own decisions regarding that, rather than just advising, you are living in an authoritarian world. And the Democrats have become authoritarian, and Gavin Newsom is willing to go right along with it so long as it gives him continued power.
Which is, you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
But I appreciate that. I mean, it's the reason you're here, because I think people need to understand your success, your influence, what you've been up to, and the fact that you're on these college campus tours. And to your point, man, you just open up. I mean, you're like, ask me anything.
Anything.
Challenge me,
whatever.
When did this whole thing, when did you start putting this together?
I've been at this for 13 years, and it's been a wild movement, really accelerated once President Trump kind of came on the scene. Right around, I'd say 2021, we had a goal. Could we move the youth vote 10 points over 10 years? And
it was literally, you sat down and put that numerical together.
Yeah, like, can we move it 10 points over 10 years? Ish, approximate. Yeah. Because our whole hypothesis was, and we did this alongside President Trump and his great team, was that this demographic is disproportionately to the Democrat side. We believe Democrats were taking them for granted. We think that your side had no message whatsoever and an ideological monopoly. We saw some of the fault lines there. And to President Trump's credit, he also harmonized with the strategy by going on podcasting and using TikTok. But yeah, I mean, we did it in 4 years, not 10, large in part thanks to you guys.
And we'll get to that, and I sincerely get to that, because I want to stress test some of those fault lines as it relates to the reality of our party and where we are today, vis-a-vis your ascendancy, not just individually as an organization. But where was that sort of moment for you? Because it's interesting. I mean, you're such a young guy, so it's not like deep biography here. It's not like 20 years in the wilderness, writing his first book, getting a TV show that was canceled, coming back. It's more just this immediacy of ascendancy. Was it? I mean, were you always, you're sort of born and bred with an ideological mindset, or were you more open-minded and you started to realize a lot of BS was out there?
Yeah, I've always been conservative. Obviously grown in that over the last, 10-ish years. Was more libertarian, I'd say, in the first couple of years, as to be expected. As I got married and have kids, become more conservative. But no, look, just one of the things we saw in the last couple of years that the Democrats completely ignored, and your side was basically not acknowledging was happening, was the crisis that young people were experiencing. That, I mean, it's the first time in America's history that a 30-year-old is going to have it worse off than their parents.
Right.
It's a breakdown of the social compact.
That's right.
They are the most alcohol addicted, most drug addicted, most suicidal, most depressed, most medicated generation in history.
Right.
And the
Sad
message that was
statement.
largely being fed to a lot of young people was lower your expectations. You're not going to have the same American dream that your parents would have. And we saw this as an opportunity, especially with young men. And again, this got ridiculed a lot by the press that, oh, they're creating this manosphere thing. Look, they're half of the population and necessary for any society and civilization to succeed, which is have both.
The Democrats have been reiterating the idea that there's toxic masculinity. And if you don't supplicate yourself to women at all times and go along with the feminine route, then you are someone to be feared. This is not the way for a society to extend itself, for the polarity of the sexual energies to interact with one another, with the yin and the yang. That's what makes human beings in society advance. But they want to move us to one frequency, which is the nutty feminine. And I mean that. If you look at those women in pussy hats all over walking in those pink ones, these are crazy women that are dictating that we must bend the knee to their ideas and interests.
And strong women. Yeah. And we went about that in a very unique and creative way. And again, the president became a cultural phenomenon, where no matter what you threw at this guy, he rose above it. And you would even have to give him credit. I mean, facing 700 years in federal prison, states tried to kick him off the ballot. I know you spoke out against it, but California did have a faction that tried to kick him off the ballot, right?
That's right.
And despite all of that, of course, being shot, and that was kind of the crescendo of it.
That's the party of democracy, the party that attempts to kick President Trump off the ballots, that hasn't had a real primary in 3 election cycles. Bernie being robbed of the nomination twice by the cheating DNC, and this time kicking the man who got all of the delegates originally off the ballot, preventing RFK and Dean Phillips from running, and then anointing Kamala, the DEI hire, into the position. It's the party of democracy, though.
All of it. He kind of became this figure of an American comeback story. So he personified what a lot of young people, especially young men, wanted back in their politics, which was an ascendant rebel attitude against these institutions that have failed them so miserably.
It's interesting. So what would, and you keep saying we, which is interesting, and that's the organization that you created, Turning Point.
We would be like Conservative
Action.
Movement, MAGA. But yes, I have Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Charlie Kirk Show. But when I'm saying we, I mean more specifically kind of those of us that saw this political moment 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. But you were at this even before then. I
correct.
mean, So when did you decide to sort of just shift your gear? I mean, you were working for another Kirk, for his campaign, not
Mark
related.
Kirk,
Mark Kirk. So you had obviously you had these strong political leanings, or at least desire to sort of be in the political sphere, but not in elected office necessarily. You just want to be behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, like, the biography's been written about a million times, but I mean, didn't go to college, wanted to go to West Point, didn't get in. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah, love it.
Started this organization, and it became far more successful than I ever could have realized. And
put something
there. The kind of as we started to grow the organization, I recognized that there was a ideological imbalance on a lot of these college campuses. And we wanted to go about trying to offer a counterpoint of conservative, pro-freedom, pro-liberty, America first ideals.
And you saw that.
This is very interesting to me because nature abhors a vacuum. Nature needs a duality. It needs balance. That's why whenever you eliminate the predators from an ecosystem, it gets overrun, for example, with deer that decimate the vegetation there because there's nothing pushing back against them to keep harmony. And this is what happens whenever human beings tilt to one side of the political spectrum. There becomes devastation. If you take a look at the Soviet Union, where absolutely no pushback was allowed to the ruling party, that is exactly what took place. So thank God that in America, we allow differing opinions according to the First Amendment to prosper, to be able to go out there and fight against one another on the battleground of the public minds by being able to express ideas as these two are right now.
College campuses as sort of the underbelly of the opportunity, or is it just more just experiential in terms of your own sort of animus towards
Well, I mean,
the
both.
institution?
I mean, you have a sitting population of about 20 million kids that are there for 4 years.
There's that.
And also, again, you had nowhere to go but up. I mean, 70%, when we started in 2012, 75% of kids on college campuses would vote for Democrats.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to today, this last election cycle, Democrats lost the youth vote in Michigan, nearly lost it in Wisconsin, nearly lost it in Arizona. So our goal was, hey, let's move it 10 points. We moved it 13 points. And this is important for your audience to know and for Democrats to reckon with.
Good for you, Charlie.
Which I see no signs that Democrats care at all that they're losing the next generation. We're drawing record crowds. Our ranks are expanding. The most support that President Trump has is voters under 30. 60% of voters under 30 support President Trump. That's according to Rasmussen. You might say that's a little rich. It might be, but it's directionally true.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons that this has all been happening is that baby boomers have actually seen their wealth increased the last 4 years. They don't buy into this whole idea that our institutions are broken or that they're in need of massive bottom-up revolutionary change.
Why would they, as long as they're prospering in the current environment? One has to look at society as a whole and see whether all factions of your population are also increasing their quality of life.
And we see that actually Kamala Harris did 3 points better with baby boomers than she did in 2020.
Yeah,
and the number one story that James Carville, who everyone takes seriously for some reason, should have been saying is like all Kamala Harris had to do was just do the same with younger voters that Joe Biden did in 2020, and she would be president right now.
And remind us what Joe Biden did in 2020.
It was
younger voters.
13 points better,
Just,
approximately.
in terms of just the
again, this
numerics.
is kind of a combination of exit
Charlie, come on now. That's nothing specific. That you're just saying, just do the same thing.
polling.
Be 13 points better?
It's a difficult science to pinpoint.
So that goes back then, I mean, to your point, in order to do that, you've got to stand for something. You've got to assert yourself. You got to have a strategy and you got to implement it.
You also have to not believe.
This weasel is just taking in all the lessons that he can take from Charlie Kirk to employ in his own campaign. I will be voting against Gavin Newsom in case you didn't figure that out.
Crazy stuff.
And not believe crazy. I mean, and so for you, I mean, it's interesting. Just, this last week, I guess you were at USC, you were at University of Florida, you had thousands and thousands of folks. You get, to your point, your crowds are growing. 2012, where were you? You were coming in and people were, I mean, you were taking, I mean, you were like getting threats. I mean, you still get tons of threats.
Yep.
Oh, gee, I wonder why. It's the tolerant leftist, right? The tolerant Democrat. Any political divergence from their orthodoxy, and you get threats. That remains today. Remember when they were forcing you to say Black Lives Matter and getting in your face if you didn't, or burning down your business? These are the tolerant people, though.
But it was, I mean, what was it like? Just to paint a picture of you walking to a college campus.
I had no money, no connections, and no idea what I was doing. And yeah, I mean, I didn't even have a social media account. I mean, it was just the ultimate startup.
And what did you just say? I'm available, and you started at this sort of debate.
No,
format,
it was even more scrappy. I would literally show up to UW-Madison with a card table and a big cardboard sign saying "Debate me." Like here's some provocative.
So you're 20-something years
old.
And
I wouldn't even film it. I was 18 or 19.
18 or 19. Yeah. And what? By the way, where does that? And sincerely, to be able to debate anybody at any time, anywhere, and in that environment, it's just. I mean, you can say it's just confidence, or it's just absolute. I mean, narcissism. What is it? Well, I mean, just or just you.
I hope it's not the other. But no, I mean, I guess it would just be. I mean, at the most charitable read.
I'm just going to tell you, it's pluckiness. It's the ability and desire to get better, no matter what you do in life. If you just go out there, you start, you do it, you learn, you gain in knowledge, and the more you study it, the better you get. That's exactly what Charlie Kirk did.
Confidence. It'd also just be that I wanted to try and challenge the predominant view. I always loved debate and disagreement. I love to kind of spar.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also find it to be exciting, and I wanted to try to figure out where my idea is actually that good and to kind of draw
stress test.
Yeah, exactly.
And are you 10x better than you were in 2012?
Absolutely.
Format?
Probably.
And do you study it?
Probably more than that.
I mean, you look at the old great debates, or
both?
You're reading debating books. You're watching some of the best.
Yeah, and I mean less about debating. I mean, debating is a practice that can really only be refined, with lots of routine and reps and repetition. Just more about studying, the great books, philosophy.
Right.
All those.
And so you make a point of pride of that. I mean, you are to the point you never, you went to community college, and
Hey, I didn't even graduate community college.
And you didn't even graduate community, which is great. By the way, I was going to college in Marin. I got lucky, got a baseball coach that called me and allowed me to get to a 4-year university. I was joking with you before we started, 960 SAT. I asked you about your SAT. You said,
I took the ACT.
You took the ACT, which proves two things, how young you are. You grew up in Illinois,
I grew up in Illinois, which Midwest was traditionally more of an ACT.
But this has been a point of pride for you that you didn't do a 4-year degree. And
because I represent most of the country. Right. Is that actually still the majority of the country does not have a college degree. And if I may,
I have a 4-year degree in Bachelor in Economics from the UC system, from UC Santa Barbara specifically. And I can tell you that the one good thing that college did is it taught me how to write very, very well. I got very good at that. My economics degree, I don't think it's helped me make any of the money that I have.
Bluntly critique the Democrat Party. You guys have become so college credentialed and educated that you guys snobbishly look on the muscular class of this country, the people that kept things afloat and running during COVID. And the majority of the country didn't go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, Caltech, or Cal Berkeley, right?
Thank you.
And the Republican Party has become far more representative of them, large in part thanks to Trump. But and look, I say it with some pride also because as an entrepreneur, I tried to build something, right? Not just seek a credential.
Love that. And there are 11 million folks, there are 11 million jobs out there. You make this point all the time.
Oh yeah, open jobs that don't require a college degree.
Do not require a college degree. So when you say, and it's interesting because there's sort of that critique of the Democratic Party that we are captured by this sort of college elite. In what respect? I mean, stress test that for a second. Allow me to. What specifically are you referencing in that context?
Well, your voters.
Just for the record, I actually believe that he's sincerely asking this question, so kudos to Gavin for that. I mean, he's definitely trying to hone his 2028 presidential campaign with all this, but I actually believe that he's being sincere in his questioning.
You're become nearly, the higher you go up the education ladder, the higher the correlation it is that you vote for the Democrat Party. It's almost a 1-to-1 with PhD. It's like 75% for master's degrees, and it's 65% for four-year.
Why do you think that's the case? What are the issues that sort of are identified align in that respect?
The sloppy analysis is like, oh, they're smarter, therefore they must be Democrats.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's silly and insane.
Yeah.
But
insulting. I agree.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
The deeper and more profound analysis is that a lot of ideological bubbles that exist on these college campuses, they are homogeneous, not heterodox when it comes to what ideas are expressed. And then secondly, the value system that you leave on college campuses is high trust of institutions. So the biggest divide in America is not right versus left. It's whether or not you generally trust institutions or you don't trust institutions. And this has been largely inverted the last 20 years.
Right.
So back in the early 2000s, Democrats were low trust of institutions, Iraq War, anti-Bush, anti-NSA, anti-Patriot Act. And that's when you guys had a lot of activist spark and energy. That has been completely inverted. So the right is now low trust of institutions, where the left is high trust of institutions. We're the ones that challenge the COVID vaccine. We're the ones that think that public health authorities might have lied to us during COVID.
Right.
We're the ones that don't necessarily believe the government when it says that we should keep on sending money to Ukraine. Again, that's a general rule. There are some exceptions to that.
Right.
But when you go to college, you are trained to trust the experts, trust the scientists, trust the people that are leaders of authority. And the Democrat Party is largely the gatekeepers of that kind of ideological and intellectual regime.
It's interesting. And so from your perspective, I mean, as you advocate for people to sort of open up a worldview that is life without a 4-year degree and all the opportunities that present themselves anew in that respect, are you arguing for the disestablishment, the end of higher education?
I think it's going to happen no matter what. I mean, and in 10 years, artificial intelligence is going to change everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know what these 4-year degrees are actually doing to prepare these kids for that. But no, as far as like, am I advocating for the end of the pursuit of learning? Of course not. That's one of my big critiques is that at a lot of these schools, they're not pursuing what is good, true, and beautiful. It's become the oppression Olympics and a weaponized complaint seminar of people sitting in the circle and finding out who's been offended the most that day. That's not doing anybody any good.
No.
And in fact, it creates a very weak political movement, which I think plays into one of the reasons why we were able to steamroll you guys back in November, is that once there's a little opposition against a group of people that have never actually been, had to build the muscle mass of a very difficult and unpredictable world, whereas those of us that are conservatives, we're insulted all the time. So think about the experience of a kid on a college campus. They say they're graded differently because of their views. They may or may not be right. I think they are. But they're definitely in the ideological minority, right? You wear a Trump hat on a college campus, at least until we came around. That was like a big sign of cultural rebellion. So you have two choices. You can either stop fighting for what you believe in, or you become really tough.
Yeah.
And you create that muscle that allows you to then carry and shoulder a heavier burden.
Right. And so just, and I don't want to belabor the issues of the establishment plot called higher education, as some have, not you, referred to it, though maybe you align yourself.
No, I wrote a whole book called The College Scam.
So it's sort of stress testing that in the context of, some would argue the contra argument is, $1 million more in lifetime earnings, more likely to get married, less likely to get divorced, more likely to be civically engaged, and longer life spans with college degrees. And you would say
all of those is true. It's just not everyone that goes to college graduates. The national graduation rate,
41% drop.
Yeah, 41% dropout. Exactly right. Also, half the kids that graduate college will not even end up using their degree.
That's true.
When it comes to the affiliated jobs. So the numbers are true at the highest income. So about 10% of kids that go to college stretch out the averages to be really, really high.
Got it.
And so, for example, you go to Caltech to study computer engineering and applied AI.
Next
man,
level.
You're crushing it, right? You go to Cal to go study North African lesbian poetry.
Yeah.
Like,
is that an actual degree there?
You tell me, Governor.
I don't know. I mean, we funded, but I'm not sure that's one of the courses.
Fact that you don't know?
Well, I don't know every single damn course.
I know. It should be like, no way.
Come on now,
but
Charlie.
if the fact it's a maybe, we got some problems.
Well, the fact that a lot of people have
that's true.
different disciplines.
That's fine. It's just the taxpayer shouldn't have to fund it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yep, I agree with that
100%. Are funding, as you know, as it relates to the.
Oh, don't dodge, Gavin. That's what he always does. He always says, "Well, it's not really that way." No, the taxpayer is funding the UC system, where they're learning, as Ben Shapiro would say, lesbian dance theory. That is not a useful degree, nor is one in women's studies. All they are is an indoctrination mill to the far left. And this is how they maintain their stranglehold over these people, is that they give them these worthless degrees, and then they have to defend their choices. And when reality bashes them over the head because nobody in general wants to hire them except for the government in order to extend the indoctrination, then they rebel and they go far left, destroy the system. You're our enemy because our lives are miserable.
Version of how we fund education. Look, and by the way, just FYI, having just put together a career master plan. We had a master plan in the state of California that created the UC systems, the CSUs, and the community college system half century ago. We've applied the same discipline to a career master plan in the state of California. And so I'm completely aligned with you in terms of a focus and energy there, and looking at apprenticeships, looking not even at apprenticeships in the traditional sense, but valuing and highlighting and signaling the value of a life without a degree, et cetera. So I'm not as far off on this as you are. That said, I've got to admire what you've been able to do, not to weaponize, but to organize on these college campuses a different point of view. And again, let's talk about some of that. When you go to these college campuses, I love watching your TikTok.
Just for the record, right there, his initial thought was that Charlie is the weapon of the right. That is why that word came to his mind. Sorry to play psychologist, but one has to be able to take those thought patterns into account. Either that, or that's what he continually states about these people, or what has been indoctrinated into them. So for them, a counterpoint is the weaponization.
Which is next level. And clearly that's expressed by my 13-year-old son.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah, I actually...
He's coming to a Turning Point event this summer, Tampa, Florida, Student Action Summit.
I actually am by the way, if
you should be concerned.
But so let me say, here is why I'm concerned, because you have expressed that I should be concerned as a Democrat, that we're getting clobbered.
Okay. Yes.
That you've figured something out.
It's not me. The president first deserves the credit.
But why? No, hold on. You were at this before Trump was Trump.
I know, but he
was a Democrat back in 2011 and 12.
And that's exactly why you're getting clobbered, because all the sane Democrats, like Trump, like Tulsi Gabbard, like myself, RFK Jr., have migrated away from your authoritarian BS party that locked us down during COVID, that's trying to destroy free speech, that wants to demonize males and masculinity. That's why you guys are getting clobbered, because sane people are moving away and you're left with the fringe and those who are ideologically attached to you via their identity.
The president gives huge credit and I just have to say that as an obligatory thing, because without him, our movement would be small. And you can appreciate that in politics. You have to appreciate the person who is the catalyst.
For you, that's what you sort of attached an identity.
It was also
with
just the catalyst. It was a cultural moment that just opened us up. But
go back just on that, because I'm curious. In 2012, 13, 14, who were you identifying with from the movement perspective?
I was more like, as I mentioned, Rand Paul libertarian, because that's where the energy really was, right? And then President Trump comes on. Again, I was still very early in my political journey. So you're looking up a lot, who's the top voices? What do you believe? Why do you believe it?
Yeah. So more the libertarian front.
It was more, and I still have some libertarian leanings on some.
And when Trump came down that escalator, you're like, boom, that's
not
my
day
guy.
one. No, I was mystified at first.
Why? Just saying this guy's, there's no chance.
No, it's funny. I actually sent out a tweet 2011 when I was in high school saying Trump should run for office, but I was not mystified negatively. I was like, can this really happen? Can a guy that has no political experience come down an escalator, challenge the whole establishment?
Right. But you didn't expect Donald Trump to come down the escalator and start talking about illegal aliens or, rapists.
I didn't disagree with it. I didn't see that coming. And again, this is well documented. Early in my journey, I underestimated the silent majority that really wanted a rebalancing of the American political landscape.
So interesting. So Trump then became the catalyst. And so Turning Point became sort of next level. Your events start growing. Right. You organize around that. Turning Point action becomes what?
The political arm. One is more educational, one is more political. And we did ballot chasing in Arizona and Wisconsin. We were successful in that. Alongside the Trump campaign, Arizona was the best performing swing state.
And you're not modeling yourself at anything because the flatness of the surrounding terrain, meaning we're the Democrats. Are you looking at other organizing?
We were modeling off of some of the ballot chasing, ballot harvesting practices of the left.
Yep.
But I mean, that's a self-limiting principle. You can't ballot chase if no one wants to vote for you.
That's right.
So, I mean, you could have the best organizers in the world.
You can if you're Democrats in 2020, that's for sure. Although maybe the people in the graveyard did, in fact, want to vote for Team Blue. Who knows?
2,000 people chasing ballots in Arizona, and you're running Kamala Harris in Arizona. What we ended up tracking through our data is that the Democrats were chasing for us, is that they were chasing low propensity Hispanics, thinking that they were all for Kamala. And in fact, we were looking at the precinct numbers of areas we didn't hit that moved like 20 points in Trump's direction. We're like, well, thank you very much, Kamala.
He is the Cheshire cat with the grin on his face, knowing that he outsmarted his opponent. Good for Charlie.
Getting out and chasing our ballots and, for all these Hispanic men that are mechanics, we appreciate it. Thanks for making sure that we also won Dave McCormick's Senate seat.
Right.
So again, chasing is only one part of Democrats, of course, are better organizers than us. I mean, it's in your blood. Barack Obama was a community organizer. We make fun of it. It's who you guys are. Right. You guys have labor as a backbone, clipboard and tennis shoes. However,
and labor less and less. We can talk about that
for sure.
in a moment. Yeah.
But what we always felt that we had is we felt we had better ideas and a better message and all that. The idea was, can we combo a little bit of organizing practices with a mass movement, which is how you get a national popular vote victory and a overwhelming electoral landslide.
And so what do you see? I sort of talked about the flatness of the surrounding terrain, meaning the Democratic Party in some respect as it relates to, I appreciate your point about organizing, but also coercion versus, sort of forcing people to vote versus an enthusiasm and a desire to actually proactively get
eventually that has a backfiring effect too.
I appreciate that. And so what do you see right now? I mean, I think you talked about it the other day. A lot of folks were talking about that Carville article where he talked about
roll over and play dead.
Roll over. In essence, he said that. I think it was a strategic retreat, right? That we need to come back. Trump's starting to implode. His numbers are getting soft. This was even before the tariff issues, et cetera. And then
no, that's what's being quoted by people like Alan Lichtman based on one poll rather than an aggregate number of them, especially with one that generally is an outlier to the left. But that's the claim that they're trying to make because they got the election so wrong and they don't understand why people have moved away from the Democrats.
And back and strike when hot. And I immediately, no BS, thought about you, who's just 24/7 flooding the zone, back to my 13-year-old, owning this space, every day getting a convert, every day picking up 1, 2, 10,000 folks, continuing the momentum, coming out of this damn election. And then I'm thinking about, we're going to stand back and watch you run circles around us for 6 months, the next 2 or 3 years, waiting for the moment to finally struck me as not necessarily the best advice, and it's not a knock on Carville, who I have deep respect for. What's your thoughts?
That's okay.
No, you don't.
I don't have to. He's read about one thing in the last 40 years. It's economy is stupid, and boy, he spent down that one line pretty amazingly. But yeah, look, I'll say I don't want to make this about Carville, but like, yeah, I hope you guys retreat.
You kind of like the
more
advice.
For us.
You like
I mean,
the advice.
there's no opposition. There's no activist spark. If you guys are posting these cringe videos on social media.
What are the videos? What are the ones that
I don't know,
most
this
cringy?
like harmonious thing of like 22 senators all saying the same
You
thing.
didn't like that, yeah.
I didn't like it.
What do you-
go
what do
ahead, go do more of that.
What do you do?
Please.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
Is
Like,
it
for
ideas?
example, I mean, like, if you want to, like, you have an opportunity to, like, run to the middle and seize this mantle. Obviously,
Right.
you're talking to me about. So, like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
Right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue
What?
of fairness.
So
it's deeply.
So what do you think old Gavin is doing right here? He's moving towards the center in preparation for his run for president. But while he was in California, Gavin Newsom turned California into a sanctuary state so that minors who ran away from home, even from other states, could seek refuge for their transgender surgeries. And I'm pretty sure that California taxpayers were on the hook for at least part of these surgeries, or a few of them. And the parents who would want to petition the government, give me my children's back from please don't interfere with their lives, it was impossible to retrieve them. He stopped schools from reporting to parents when their kids somehow magically decided to transition, with their teachers saying, who's not sure about their sexuality? These absolute evil people. And when a child is 12 in California, based on laws passed by Newsom, you no longer have access to the medical records as a parent. The child can basically liberate themselves from their parent, and the father, the mother, will have no bearing on the decision of the child to transition, which of course plays right into the transgender medical community and their profits. These are evil people. Gavin Newsom enacted evil laws, and we should hold him responsible. Furthermore, here he is deflecting a question asked directly to him about transgenders and moving it to climate change.
Gender issue came up. Why should parents not know if their kids are transitioning at school?
It's a hell of a thing. You're talking about 1% of the population. Climate change, its impact 100% of the population wasn't even brought up, and we're talking about trans issues.
Here in California, this is an issue for you.
It's a big issue for parents. This is a front and center issue.
Why should parents not know?
This is one of the greatest distractions, and it's classic. 1% of the population in the United States. These kids just want to live.
This is a tired strategy that Newsom and other Democrats and all politicians, in fairness, deploy when asked a tough question. It is just a deflection, a shaking of the head like you don't know what you're talking about, rather than confronting it directly. And this is why nobody in their right mind should be voting for Gavin.
Out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump. I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. By the way, as someone with 4 kids, I think
and two daughters, right?
2 daughters.
And I have a daughter too.
And a wife that went, God forbid, to Stanford and played on the junior national soccer team, and a guy who got into college only because I was left-handed and could throw a baseball a little bit or hit the ball for a little bit. So I revere sports. And so the issue of fairness is completely legit. And I saw that the last couple of years. Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize.
That's why he's moving to the center.
Pejorative, you're right. But you were able to
shine a light on?
Highlight it in a way that, frankly,
very good. Very good. You see what Charlie did there? He reframed it. Gavin Newsom is using the term weaponize again, and I noted that earlier because that's the way he thinks, that anybody with a counter viewpoint is weaponizing it against his side. No, we are merely shining a light on the idiocy and the evil of the Democrats and the left in terms of wanting to get children butchered because they're momentarily confused about their sexuality, because they're going through puberty, because they're not very popular, because they're on the spectrum. For whatever reason, this is taking place, and the Democrats are encouraging while Republicans and sane people are just saying, hey, why don't we wait until they're at least 18 years old so that they can make the decision from a more developed mind and brain?
Not that many out. We're talking about, I think, the NC2A, what, 510,000? No, but I just didn't realize.
It's 890 medals and trophies that we know of in the last 5 years. That's a lot.
No, so let me step back.
And scholarships.
Completely fair on the issue of fairness. I completely agree. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and grace.
Years ago,
that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And
that's because their mind is already there. It's an unfortunate fact. I don't wish that upon them. But anybody who decides that they're in the wrong body, that they don't have, that they're not the right sex, honestly, this is a mental illness as defined by the medical community, and it's called gender dysphoria. It literally is a mental illness.
The way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed on the issue?
No,
he's pandering to his base is what he's doing. And again, there's nothing sincere about Gavin Newsom. He's trying to play both sides of it. This is a very politician thing to do. This is what he's going to try to do with his run for president.
Same deal with the unfairness.
So you asked a good faith question, like how do we Democrats get out of the wilderness?
Yeah.
This one is an 80-20 issue. New York Times poll, right?
That's I agree with you.
Right, moving in this way.
And like
that's the
and
only
an opportunity in the state to be like, look, I have a heart for A.B. Hernandez. I have a heart for the San Jose volleyball player.
Yeah.
Let's give them compassion. What's not fair is just for like entire women's sports.
I agree. By the way, I agree with you. And it's interesting. I stress tested this, Charlie. I was wondering, I said, in California, and I've been a leader in the LGBTQ space, as you know, back in 2004, was marrying same-sex couples. And I know we have different opinion on marriage equality. And so I've been at this for years and years. I take a backseat to no one. But I was actually on the issue of sports, which...
Why don't you virtue signal more that you're an ally of the LGBT community and so that they're going to be less vociferous with their voices that you are stabbing in them in the back, which is certainly what they're going to say because these people are insano.
In the last few years, it's just exploded. Trying to understand the 10 athletes in the NC2A, 510,000 athletes, but 10 athletes, but how profound. And even my own friend cohort, people saying, the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you calling this out? When did this happen? So turns out in 2014, years before I was governor, there was a law established that established the league allow trans athletes in women's sports. But the issue of fairness is completely legit. So I completely align with you. And we've got to own that. We've got to acknowledge it. And
other than the caveats that I've
of politics, because you disagree with
myself.
Same-sex marriage on principle. And so I'm not, and by the way, I value the fact that you're not trying to walk away from that principle because electorally,
I'm in the minority of it.
Yeah, in the minority. And I don't want to walk away from this principle because it's electoral, but it is an issue of fairness. And I think Democrats have lost that.
I think that I wish that we would have done this podcast last week. Because the U.S. Senate just every Democrat voted against that bill. And I'm just telling you, I'm not one to give Governor Newsom advice. You guys are giving us an 80-20 issue that is just permeating the country. It's such an affront to our senses. And you look at these videos, Governor, because it's not just that it's, okay, you read an article about it, but these young men that are in these sports, they're throwing around girls, and it is an issue of fairness, but it goes to a broader arch narrative.
There you go.
Which is important.
No, and I want to hear this.
Which is this, that the Democrats, you guys will tend to view an incident through an oppressor-oppressed lens.
Yeah.
It's your training. It comes from college. It comes from... And we, as conservatives, tend to view things through right or wrong or just or unjust. And the country is going far more in our direction and away from your direction, because the problem with oppressor-oppressed is eventually you run out of oppressors and you start creating them out of thin air.
Yeah.
And you start trying to say, well, these people
That's
must
exactly
be
what
blamed
they've done.
for all of our problems, and that's where you get a lot of the, let's just say for example, there's a Wall Street Journal editorial
For the record, there are Black people out there that claim that I am an oppressor to them because I'm white. I've actually heard from these people that just because I have white skin, that automatically makes me an oppressor. I have not had a single member of my dad's family in the United States during the time of slavery, nor Jim Crow for that matter, because my dad emigrated from Europe in 1970s. And my mom's side of the family were a bunch of poor farmers from Pennsylvania. So I don't even know what they're talking about or how they could formulate this fact.
White, nut up or stop complaining. That does no good for anybody, right?
No.
So what I'm getting at though is it's a worldview difference, right?
And so that's why the issue is so much more powerful.
Of course it is, but it's also pattern recognition.
Yeah.
It's pattern recognition of a Democrat Party that post 2020 decided to go all in. We call it woke. You might call it, justice or whatever it is, but it's so outside of what we would consider traditional Americans' norms and customs. And again, so a Democrat strategist would say, "Oh, Charlie, you're weaponizing stuff." Not you, but like that's a typical thing. Right. But the most effective ad of this election cycle, the most effective ad, what it is?
Yeah, and devastating. Trump's for you, she's for they, them.
And
devastating.
Devastating.
But let's talk about, she didn't even react to it, which was even more.
And let's talk about why it was devastating. Number one,
what could she say? What in the world could Kamala Harris say? How could she have reacted to it? Everybody knows it's true. It hits home. You're going to only appeal to the 20% of people that believe that, if it's even that high, that transgender women or men, males going to females, should be allowed to beat up women on the sports field. Believe me, I played against a Kansas State female starter, 4-year starter for Kansas State University. I'm a good basketball player for a guy, but I'm nowhere near college level, Division I. I destroyed her. It was just like, there was no effort on my part. This is what happens. Imagine when the disparity becomes even greater and you have a 6'4" male competing in swimming against females. It's just not even a contest.
Trans issue that was just monopolizing,
and this was even more challenging because there's issues of people that are incarcerated
and illegal
incarcerated individuals getting taxpayer funded.
Yes, and
gender reassignment surgeries.
And
that's
the
a
left
90-10, not an 80-20.
Right, and then she's like,
no, it's like 99-1. Why in the world should I have to pay my tax dollars so that some crazy person who's already committed some heinous crime gets to have a transition surgery, gender reassignment, whatever you want to call it, in prison? Is anybody out there for it? Please leave it in the comments if you are.
Defending it, bragging, being like, I'm all for this.
And then you had the video that was a validator. Brutal.
Yeah. And so
tens of millions of brutal. And then the targeted focus from the Trump campaign, next level.
And then Charlemagne comes out on Breakfast Club, is like, this is insane. And they ran it on NFL football.
Brilliant.
Yes. And so you're trying to reach men. Yeah. It's a brilliant campaign commercial. It was brutal. It was devastating. It doesn't require.
By the way, we were running around just for the what the hell it's worth. For you, she was AG at the time. She was addressing the issue of illegal settlement. The courts were intervening on this topic, but she had the video where, in the video, she was obviously expressed support, and so 100%.
She was being a cheerleader for a very unpopular thing.
It was, it was a great ad. And I don't say that lightly.
But this is important
in political annals.
And I want to make sure it's not just that this was like the Willie Horton ad of the 2024. Yeah. It wasn't just like a Lee Atwater brilliance. It's that it reflected truth that the voters felt.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that because voters felt as if their country was slipping away.
Yeah.
Now, Democrats have a choice. You could say to those people, you're racist, you're Nazis, you're fascists, you're terrible. Or you can listen to them and be like, why is it that a steel worker in Pittsburgh who's voted Democrat his entire life is voting for Trump despite all of, the stuff that's been thrown at him?
Yeah, and all the rhetoric that he's thrown at us.
Yes,
in that context.
But it's a pattern, and
don't even come close to both sides.
But the second element was also what we saw under Joe Biden was, if you came to the southern border from any country and you spoke the magic words, you could go to any city you're choosing, right? CBP One border app, and all of a sudden, that steel worker in Pittsburgh's like, why am I paying all these taxes?
I get it.
And I'm getting I can't.
You get it? Really? You get it? You are the head of the snake, Gavin Newsom. You made California a sanctuary state a long time ago. You approved free medical care for illegals. And now you're saying you get it while the rest of us have to bust our ass in order to pay our insurance bills, our medical bills. You are giving this out for free via my tax money, meaning that I'm paying even more for somebody else who shouldn't even be in this country for their medical care. In California, there was a bill that was, I think it passed the legislature for $150,000 so that illegals could participate in the American dream of owning a house, and a $150,000 down payment would be given to them. You can fact check me on that, but I'm directionally correct here. That this was paid for with my tax money so that I can't buy a house, but an illegal coming here can. And you're saying you get it? This is why you're such an disingenuous snake, Gavin.
Afford beer. I can't afford anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess my question is to you, what are the Democrats going to do about it?
So I'm going to answer that in a second, but let me pull a few more threads. You said 2020 is when you started to see the Democrats sort of advance this notion of wokeism.
It's when the awakening
really started. What was it?
You know what I'm talking about.
No, but so is it? Yes, the Latinx stuff. That, by the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree.
but where did that even?
No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
I really doubt the fact that there's nobody in your office that used Latinx. I really, really doubt that. All you guys are virtually woke effers.
The pronouns, by the way, once you think California invented the frame of the pronoun. Literally, I had one meeting where people started going around the table of pronouns. One. There's been a hell of a lot of days between 2020 and today.
Really? Is that why Kamala Harris once sat at a table and say, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm in a blue dress? I think that this is widespread around the Democrat Party. We all know it. Now you're trying to distance yourself from what was reality. I don't believe you, Gavin. Sorry, you're a liar.
And waiting. So it's not like this is, I'm like, what the hell why is this the biggest issue?
Well, in corporate America, it's everywhere.
Okay,
so you know.
All right. Well,
and college campuses.
It must college. See, that's where you reside a lot, in the college campus.
So you got to defund these schools if they're doing the pronouns. You got to
Jesus. Okay. And so number three, what else? I mean, you started. What was also the big wokeism thing? I mean,
first of all, it wasn't just the projection of certain narratives, which we could obviously go through.
Yeah.
But it's when policy started to come forward.
And what kind of policy?
Hiring practices. When we're not going to hire.
There was DEI decades ago.
Yeah.
It was just called outreach and inclusion.
But we saw mass adoption. What we saw, and not only that, we saw pledging of billions of dollars of donations to racial justice from the biggest types of corporations imaginable.
Fair point. And that was sort of post George Floyd.
That's what I'm saying. That's when this. So you had a combustible.
And was
effect.
that wrong? I mean, to address the issue.
Yes, it's wrong to discriminate and hire somebody specifically based on their race, based on some mythical oppression that LeBron James's son never got to experience because he grew up in a billionaire family because his dad could play basketball despite barely being able to complete a sentence. Yes, it's wrong to discriminate against somebody based on their color of skin. Yes, Gavin, it was effing wrong.
There's legitimate issues as it relates to past practices.
What was insulting to a lot of people is, number one, where's the money going? Because the top premier BLM charity ended up being a racket, right? With Patrisse Cullors, like where'd that $100 million go? So all of a sudden we learned that, and all these pledges of corporate dollars were going to this woman that's like hiring her like brother for personal security, and that like a lot of and you would even agree like that.
No, that became like the poster child.
But number two,
the broader movement.
But number two, which I think was most important,
the whole movement
was that it elevated then this scholarly community that was otherwise fringe, like Robin DiAngelo and other people, and her book White Fragility. Literally, the entire premise of her book is that white people need to stop being so fragile about race. You need to sit down and shut up and hear how racist you are. And she was brought on tours to corporations across the country. And by the way, just so you understand, this was a phenomenon over months and months, and it didn't quite catch up in time for the 2020 election. I do believe that if you guys would have been a little less insane on crime in the summer of 20, you would have completely clobbered us in November of 20. It was like the riots that even made 2020 close.
Right.
But then it was the extension of all of the what we would call woke stuff.
Right. Defund police.
Yeah, I mean, Minneapolis literally had to hold a special vote saying, like, should we still have a police department?
Yeah, that was lunacy.
I mean, but Governor, I don't want to.
By the way, you're talking to someone who's never supported the defund police.
I'm not saying. I know, but
it was explicit.
But also, hold on one second. You did support Prop 16 in 2020, which would have legalized racial prejudice, right? Prop 16 literally would, and it
I have to go back to my Prop 13.
You know, you're smart.
No. He absolutely knows. This is the way that politicos and especially as some slimy ass one like Gavin Newsom get to dodge questions. Well, I don't remember that. Let me go back, check my notes.
16.
I taught 960 SAT, so a little humility.
Hold on, no, you're the governor of the largest state in the country.
And you want to run for president now with 960 on your SATs, and that's how you get to deflect the fact that you don't know what Prop 16 was or your stance on that, or claim that you don't remember. So now you want to advance and you want to deflect using stupidity as your excuse, and yet you want to be president. I think that right there should be a reason that people not vote for you. Please don't vote for Gavin Newsom.
No. I saw your debate against DeSantis. You're good at this stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Prop 16 would have had legalized racial prejudice, which would it got defeated by 16 points despite all the institutions. So you're asking me, what did wokeism look like? When California, when all the institutions, yourself included, with all due respect, embraced this insane ballot measure, guess what? Even the people of California didn't want racial discrimination.
Remember, California since 1996 has had Prop 209. So the affirmative action case came from the Supreme Court as relates to.
But you don't remember a much more recent Prop 16, but you remember that. Again, deflect to stupidity.
Institutions of higher learning had no impact on California. So it's an interesting, California also codified as a constitutional amendment, marriage between a man and a woman. And that was in the 2000s. So California runs an interesting
I found it to be
trends.
illuminating, though, that despite, there was really like no opposition. It was like a couple hundred like Asian activists.
Honestly, but I just
want to say, you asked the question, what did wokeism look like? Prop 16 in California that would have had legalized racial discrimination.
That was not a major. There was a broader national.
That was nothing. Don't pay attention to that.
There were hundreds of such ballot referendums, right?
Yeah. Okay.
There was, city council meetings where they said the white people aren't allowed here, right?
And that's not good.
No, it's not good.
Stuff, yeah.
And so
that's just pure racism, isn't it? You're discriminating against white people. White people do not even bother to show up because you are the oppressors. Once again, this is wokeism. This is what Charlie Kirk is defining. This is what Gavin Newsom has tacitly, if not overtly, supported. Don't vote for Gavin.
What ends up happening is a broader question of sensible, not racist suburban moms that are like, wait a second, I have a 8-year-old white son. Are you trying to say he's a racist?
Yeah. No,
and it creates a backlash that then bubbles up, right?
I appreciate that perspective. And no, I appreciate not just the perspective. I totally appreciate what you just said as an explicit statement of fact. To make an 8-year-old feel like they're racist is absurd and outrageous.
That's what they were doing in California schools and all the woke schools around the country. You had the message being delivered to little kids that they're the oppressors because of their color of skin. How can you divide a society in a better way than to manipulate the mind of an 8-year-old that you are the oppressor, that white people are bad, that masculinity is toxic? This is why I've run away from the Democrat Party.
Now in California public schools.
But we're also.
And I'm not trying to drill you on. I'm just being honest. Like you could say that, but like maybe you should like convene a special session and say like no more, race-based teaching against white people in the schools of California or Asians. I'm just saying though that like this is not a conjecture. It's not a hypothetical. Right. It is embedded into the DNA of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate it. The CRT stuff.
Yes.
I was trying to find it. Where is you think we have CRT?
Gavin Newsom was the king of introducing CRT into schools and California in general. God, he's looking for it. He's trying to find it. No, you were a big advocate for it.
In K through 12 education.
You have the principles of it. Of course, critical theory is like a PhD level
that's
course
a different thing.
taught by Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw. Yeah. But of the same way that you have advanced physics and the theories of physics in 8th grade, it's like saying like you don't have the elements of it. But for example, it's very simple.
But at least that explains why, because I was trying to find it.
We know of over at least 50 schools in California that do things called privilege walks. Do you know what privilege walks are?
What are privilege walks?
Where they make kids walk ahead based on certain questions, and they try to make a point saying, well, see, the white people are ahead. They must have white privilege.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, no.
I get it.
Like, all right, I'm going to try to ignore it. Back into the classroom.
No, you got to get
I got 6 million kids.
You got to get your education czar.
1,050 school districts, the largest school system on the planet.
I know that.
But no excuse, because these things are important. And by the way, it's the reason we're having this conversation. This is very illuminating and helpful to me to understand sort of.
It's too much with the hand on the heart. I'm being sincere. That's generally the mark of somebody who's insincere, who's continually going back there. But maybe that's just the oily, weaselly, unctuous politician that just is used to 2-minute sound bites and has to act for the camera. Maybe this is something that is ingrained within him. I'm not sure, but I'm hypothesizing. Leave your thoughts in the comment section, please.
Yeah. What is it about, that anime? I joke with people. I said, you guys don't like DEI, CRT, ESG, DOJ, FBI,
it's
IRS.
All the acronyms.
It's all the damn 3-letter acronyms. What the hell's the issue? What's going on with all that?
Oh, gee, I wonder.
You missed some.
Explain it,
Which
please.
ones? Which others? What have I missed? EPA? Of course, you don't like, you can't stand
the
EPA.
Employment Prevention Agency.
Jeez.
Right?
Oh, okay. You're about to get that 65%. That's what Lee's calling for.
I hope so.
Look, it's not just acronyms that we dislike, for the record, but it's what
feels like that sometimes. I mean, how about the book ban stuff? On a serious note, 4,240 books or titles, libraries and schools are banned in 2023. Is that not as a conservative?
Well, it depends.
I'm sorry. I hope that Charlie goes into the framing of a banning. What it is, it's curating. Why should a book that depicts giving a blowjob and how to use Grindr, how is that curating it from the library and saying that this does not belong is not banning a book for the public? This is not a violation of the First Amendment. This is saying that this does not belong in the schools for an 8-year-old, for a 10-year-old, that they should not be reading these books, that it's not helpful in anything other than indoctrinating them into kink society. And I refute the framing, so I hope that Charlie does a reframe.
I think we can both agree pornography should not be taught to 9-year-olds.
Fair point.
Okay,
there.
So that's a book ban.
Okay, exactly what I'm saying.
Some other books.
Oh, no.
Bill O'Reilly's.
It's not a banning, it's a
Moms for Liberty
curating.
contention. Time out.
Yeah.
I agree on Bill O'Reilly. The Moms for Liberty movement that you made a big thing of was just no porn to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
We agree. So those books should be banned.
Well, okay.
So what we should do right now is every California school that has porn in their library should be kicked out.
Does that include the Bible?
Ban. Well, I wouldn't say the Song of Solomon is porn.
No, but I mean, some have made that point. Is that a fair?
What about anything in the Quran? Are you going to say that the same thing about the Quran? It's kind of injurious to faith-believing people to claim that the Bible is pornography. Don't you think, Gavin? Is that the way you're framing it? Hey, let's run this ad. Gavin Newsom claims that the Bible is pornography. That would be a good election ad to run, don't you think?
I don't think that's fair.
And as
at
a man
all.
of faith, and I deeply admire that about you.
Thank you.
No, you don't.
But no, I mean, again,
I don't
the
believe
Song
you're
of Solomon
sincere.
is rather risque.
No, it's
but what we're
very
talking
so,
about
but-
in these books is not just the words; it's also the images. And again, your audience can look at the images themselves.
Okay.
It's highly graphic. But again,
he's trying to make an equivalent between the pornographic books for children, like is this book gay, to the Bible. I mean, that right there is insane.
Banning binge. I mean, at next level, sort of cancel culture.
It's not
But
banning,
why do you
it's
think
curating.
moms are doing that? Do you think it's because they want to have mind control, or do you
No,
think
I
that they have come across
I think
incident of highly provocative material?
I love moms, but this mom's.
The question is, why would somebody want to have such books in the library? Let's look at their motives as to why they want to expose children to these pornographic images. What is the reasoning behind that? Why should these books not be curated? And why are you depicting it as a ban, framing it as such?
I mean, we don't have to get into Moms for Liberty. It seems
you brought up the book bans, though. I mean,
deeply organized for a larger agenda, but that's my humble opinion.
No,
to prevent their children from reading pornography in schools.
Kind of complete the point is that it's easy to just call it kind of a book ban, but when you actually have to read some of these books, it will take your breath away of some of the stuff, right? You're like, okay, we're teaching a 10-year-old how to put a condom on.
I know. I just have a problem with, who the hell is going to decide that? Government? I mean, Ron DeSantis is going to decide what I can read or say.
Well, I'm sorry. You're the one who decided via Bill AB 012 that medical doctors who had different opinions about COVID would lose their licenses if they tried to express themselves, as I mentioned earlier, which is a severe violation of our First Amendment and the draconian measures that you're taking. So you want to talk about who has the right to have an opinion on something? F you, Gavin.
I mean, in the boardroom, in the classroom.
This is the exercise of politics, though.
Yeah.
The exercise of politics is the highest form of community because it blends morality and sociability. So what we do is we have discussion and elections, and we have boards and commissions, right? And we as a people say, okay, no porn for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And that's politics, right? I mean, I'm not saying that there's
we got to stress test whether the Bible's included in that. I don't even want to go
again
anymore.
No, that's very offensive.
No, it's tough, but this is becomes the dialectic.
Say that about the Quran. Everything, you can just put the shoe on the other foot. You want to say the thing about the Bible? I guarantee you that the Quran has some verses in it that are unkind and thus should be examined. And maybe you should phrase the Quran in the same way that you do the Bible, but you don't, because there's going to be a severe penalty, including the potential loss of life if you were to do so as a public figure.
I have heard a lot. I've never heard. That's interesting, though.
It's a provocative. I don't mean to offend.
Fair,
again, I deeply don't mean to offend. By the way, if Father Kaz would be offended
if
with
you
me.
Think the Bible's pornographic.
No, but there's
I think many people should be offended
most
by
of these
you,
books are quote unquote not pornographic. There's sections that can offend
of images that are very violating to young kids.
Some we would agree on that.
But can I just say one other thing? But
books.
if you want to learn, Governor, and I'm happy that there is a movement of moms that's growing, where they feel as if our kids are being hypersexualized. And I agree with them.
I would agree.
That they have to hear topics.
Social media?
Well, both in the social media and the classroom.
Particular.
You signed a law where school districts can't even tell parents if their kids are trans.
Not true.
Okay,
Factually untrue.
Okay, then.
No, they can. They just can't get fired for not doing that. And it wasn't just trans.
Fired for not.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being
snitching. Note the word that he's using, snitching. So the kid is doing something wrong. When you snitch on somebody, you're doing so, and the word snitch is based on the fact that the person is doing something wrong. So it's snitching if this kid is trying to change their sexuality or is confused. That's the way you're framing it. Again, the word does have some significance.
Trans for being gay. And my point is, how in the hell
but are you the parents know?
They have every.
Wait,
by the way,
parents should absolutely know.
The teachers themselves have the right. The law is they can do that. They can do that. We're not saying you can't do that. We're saying you shouldn't.
I guarantee you that the teacher would get in trouble if they were to tell the parent that the child is transitioning. I guarantee. And he's arguing from a position of authority because he's the governor of the state. So Charlie doesn't have all the receipts. And neither actually do I at the moment. But this is very hard for Charlie to come back, because here you have the governor who actually signed the law into place. But from all I've heard is that teachers were pretty much barred from disclosing to parents. And as a parent of 4 children, I would want to kill the teacher if they were to keep this from me. I mean that literally. Like, I think it's their responsibility to tell me what's going on with my child if they're being so confused.
Fired if you choose not to say Johnny was talking about liking some other boy.
That's a charitable reading. The other
it's
way
not charitable. It's actually the freedom not to.
Let me tell you the other way to say this: that a teacher, of course, should be fired if you don't notify a parent of what's happening to their kid. But of course, they should be terminated for that.
If on health and safety, shouldn't they be teaching? I want these kids to teach. I want these teachers to teach. And by the way, if they feel like the health or safety,
teach gender ideology, teach the fact that you're born in the wrong body, or make people question it. That's what they're teaching in California schools.
They have a responsibility to communicate. They still can. By the way, we're not telling these teachers they can't. We're saying they won't be fired if they don't look around and say in the recess, there were 2 boys. Why didn't you see that? You're fired. You should have said something because they're talking about
2 different things. But there, of course, should be a penalty measure, whether it be termination or whatever, if a teacher withholds information from a parent. Because what you're saying is that there's no way to hold them accountable. So you're saying you're
accountable to what, though?
The
accountable
parents,
to 2 kids talking about the fact that
this is
talking about subject matter. All of a sudden now we have to have teachers policing
I think,
speech or conversations.
I think you would even agree, Governor. That is an over extreme example. What we're talking about.
No, but the extreme example. This was a solution in search of a problem.
What we're talking about is which happens a lot, unfortunately, is if a young girl says that, hey, I want to transition, and the teacher accommodates and affirms it, and the parent doesn't even know. I have met parents like that in the state.
I heard Trump, and then they come back and they're a boy or something. There's so much extreme.
I will say, and we don't have to, we don't have to wrestle too much on this topic.
Yeah. All you have to do is look at the number of children that are wanting to undergo transitions or have. There's a reason for it. Why did this happen before? It's because the Democrats, these evil people, have gotten into their minds that if everything is not going in their life perfectly, maybe they can take a different course that will rectify their problems and situation.
You guys will lose on these topics, and you might disagree,
but
again,
they will.
I'm one of those guys, and Charlie, I appreciate, and I by the way, appreciate the civility which we're engaged in this conversation sincerely. I don't mind losing. Sometimes you lose on principle. It's one of those things. Everything
the last thing you want to do is lose. That's why you're moving to the center, you big douche liar.
It's not political is the point. And sometimes the principle, and by the way, mad respect for you on abortion and same-sex marriage. You feel
where
the
the
same
American
way.
people don't agree with me.
Exactly. And I admire that on principle. But for me, it's not just political. And I appreciate
Everything
you
for you
making
is
that
political.
point. I deeply am mindful of the politics of this, which are very unhelpful.
Okay, I just
personally, it's unhelpful. More broadly, professionally, the Democratic Party and our brand.
That's why
one of the
you're moving
reasons,
to the center.
your point, the Democratic Party brand has just been crushed.
And so
because you're evil.
Your self-awareness is helpful to know, because it is deeply unpopular, and I think that is an ascendant political force,
Right,
that is not going away.
No, I appreciate, but I also appreciate you hold deeply unpopular beliefs.
Of course I do, but
But you're not running for office.
I'm not going to run for president as a moderate.
I absolutely don't believe that Gavin Newsom holds these beliefs. He does whatever is politically expedient for him.
When are you running for office?
I'm not running for anything.
I saw a poll in Arizona that you were like 1 or 2. You have the highest name ID and a favorability. When are you running? Is that what this is all about?
No, it's definitely
not. By the way,
that.
You're not even old enough to be president. You're only 31 years old. You got to be. You
I'm
and
not
AOC.
running for anything.
You're going to run against AOC.
I'm running for head of most popular TikToker.
No.
But I'm not running for anything.
By the way, should we ban TikTok? Are you?
No, we should not. I used to say that, and then I started.
Yeah, why'd you change your position? Because
it's really interesting.
Fair
question. Fair question.
Well, no, definitely wasn't. Trump. I sent out a tweet, and I'm perfectly honest about this. I think you'd respect this. Is that I was so mad at them because they would ban me all the time, and I sent out a tweet saying like, "Hey, if you guys are really for free speech, as a creator, like let's see it. Get a call from TikTok a couple hours later. We're going to show you that we're for free speech. We're going to show you the power of the platform."
Right.
And I saw real changes where our campus interactions went from being banned to now well over 2.5 billion views on TikTok. And so I wouldn't say expedient, I'd say impact. And also they now have changed some of their speech codes. They've changed some of their, hey, enough for your son.
I'm going to have to disagree with Charlie here. TikTok is merely a tool of the Communist Party of China that is meant to subvert America. It's the Lao Tzu strategy to win without fighting. If you can decimate a population via propaganda, which is pretty much what TikTok extols based on Xi Jinping's preferences, and the ultimate goal is the destruction of America. So yeah, they might let Charlie Kirk's videos go through and lessen the effect, but the overall direction that they're trying to move is to try to demoralize America and destroy our public spirit. I do not believe that it's a free speech platform, and how could it, based on the fact that they do whatever the Chinese government instructs them to do?
Your son finds my content somehow.
I use TikTok. I was just out there. I wasn't out there trying to champion the ban. I just love this conversion. It's a hell of a conversion.
Hey, I'm open about it.
I appreciate it. But just back to the Democratic Party. We talk about we're not aligned with them. They don't trust us. I think we have 31 favorability, 57% on favorability.
I'm surprised it's that high, Governor.
And by the way, thank you. 31% favorability is not good enough. So I mean, back to just the basics. So you talked about wokeism broadly defined. We talked about some specific examples of that. You began on transport, which is interesting, and I respect and appreciate.
I want you to speak out against that one, Governor.
No, I appreciate. Well, we just did with of all of you. I mean, I've been saying that. It's so interesting when it gets picked up, and that maybe goes to the question. We live in these filter bubbles. We're talking to ourselves. We're in these sort of, it's Newsmax, One American News, Fox, and then it gets into all the stuff that you guys are doing and everybody else. And meanwhile, I'm safe over here at MSNBC and CNN, reading the New York Times, feeling really great about things and having a nice glass of Chardonnay, listening to Rachel Maddow, self-medicating and just going, yes,
at
yes,
the French Laundry, of course.
Yeah, the French, that's, of course, the only place I eat. And,
you get me a table,
great takeout and the whole.
What Charlie Kirk is referencing is the fact that during lockdowns, Gavin Newsom went with a bunch of lobbyists and friends to the French Laundry, perhaps the most expensive restaurant in the United States in Napa Valley, and was photographed there. And he originally stated that they all had masks on and everything was copacetic with his rules and regulations, when in fact they didn't, and it wasn't. And now he's going to probably admit that it was a mistake. No, it was the fact that you never believed in your lockdowns that you made us all go through. You are a hypocrite. You are a liar, Gavin. That's what it exposes. You never had the fear of COVID that you tried to instill in the rest of the population, That is what makes you an evil person. I can understand it if you were some numbnuts who actually believed what you called to be medical science at the time, and you just cowered in your house with a mask on the entire time. But you weren't. You're just a liar.
Thing. Well, I should have been at Applebee's. I get it. Applebe's America. I read the
Come
books.
on, man.
Come on.
In-N-Out Burger.
Jesus
Be with the
Christ.
people.
And here's a guy who makes 25 times more money than I do, and sitting here with a jacket, and I'm sitting here with it.
That's right. And you control the fifth largest economy on the planet.
We don't control the people. Control the fifth largest economy. And by the way, proud that you know it's a $3.89 trillion
with a declining
economy.
Population. But
no,
hey,
the population went up last year. The population went up.
Charlie's
last year.
jab.
We'll talk about that later. I got a whole thing on that.
That's just factually untrue. In that
290,000 net.
By the way,
anyway, we'll
394 National Guard that I put down at the border 6 years ago. You should be championing that as governor of California. 394 we have down at the border. We've been focused on fentanyl. I've been working on this.
But anyway, you're getting somewhere complimentary.
I was. Going back to...
You're talking about your wine
and not authentic.
French
Gavin is not authentic.
I was talking about the importance of never... I can't help you with a reservation.
I get such a kick out of this whole shtick. I got to be honest.
Jesus, very nice. By the way, we couldn't have this conversation with that conversation. Dumbest bonehead move of my life. Okay, own it. Move on.
Because you don't believe in it. Because, as I said, you don't believe. Because you don't believe in what you were forcing down the throats of the rest of the population. Remember when that surfer was arrested off the coast of California, off of Malibu, I believe it was, and they hauled him in because he was surfing hundreds of meters away from the nearest other person, potentially. But you are out there at the French Laundry enjoying one of the fanciest meals on the planet.
Talking to myself. I'm looking right at you in the eyes as I say that, just to get your reaction.
He's not a sincere person.
We're losing. We have I feel it's asymmetry of Donald Trump and Elon Musk sending out tweets, or you doing social media, and then me doing a 3-minute hit at 3:00 in the afternoon on CNN. I mean, how the hell will we compete? We're toast.
Well, I mean,
you're toast because your ideas suck, because you're trying to force kids to transition and use taxpayer dollars to pay for it. That's why you're fucking toast. Because Donald Trump is for you and Gavin Newsom is for they, them. You're just trying to change that narrative.
Part of it, credit to you for doing long-form podcasting, because long-form podcasting does penetrate different audiences, right? And our show does very well. But part of the problem of the Democrat Party that for the health of the country would be great to change is that Democrats cannot survive in long-form podcasting environments.
Why?
It's too unscripted. It's too masculine, honestly. And the Democrat Party's become too feminine.
What is masculine about a podcast? Honestly, because I get the whole manosphere, this bro podcast.
To go into the wilderness with no rules and duel it out and see who's better or who's stronger. No, seriously.
Good frame.
What Democrats can.
No, I mean, like...
We don't do it. You're right. We, for whatever reason, don't do it.
You can laugh, but like who in the Democrat Party...
We're not. You're right.
Will go, I mean, maybe Bernie Sanders, but he only went for like an hour and a half.
when he was a Democrat.
Well, Bobby, who's now...
RFK is not even a Democrat anymore because y'all forced him out of the party. All the sane people have left the Democrat Party, and that includes me, because I absolutely despise everything that you are promoting, and you're only doing so because you think that's going to advance your political career, which is what makes you such an disingenuous hack, Gavin.
Yes, but there's something to be said that if you want to earn the respect of forgotten America, you have to show them that you can intellectually joust with no script, no hard breaks, no producers in the ears, no teleprompters. That's where new media is going. Now, I'll only challenge one thing you say. I am reaching new audiences. I'm not talking to my bubble, because our content is so appealing. It goes in a decentralized way.
And it's not just political.
No, it's not political. Culture. But like, again, our conversation here is going to go far and wide, right? Yeah. A lot of people are going to see it. A lot of people are going to consume it, because it's also politics and entertainment have begun to overlap, right? And the old adage is, well, politics is downstream from culture. I think politics and culture are indecipherable from one another now. Donald Trump became a cultural phenomenon, right? You go into, inner city Compton, you'll see guys with Trump shirts with, the hand up, fight, fight, fight.
Yep.
So what Democrats are doing is you're still playing in a very old, hyper-sanitized media environment.
Right.
And my advice is you got to go where it's unpredictable, where it's treacherous, where it's dangerous. Now, I would make a more provocative argument that you wouldn't necessarily resonate with, which is that you guys have not built the intellectual muscle over 30 years because you all agree with each other all the time.
Well, it's not like conservatives are massively disagreeing.
Well, hold on. This
actually they do.
Completely collapsed the conservative movement.
I would push back a little bit. I would disagree. We have a robust discussion.
Well, it seems like Congress is really doing great oversight.
Just look at the H-1B visa and how Vivek Ramaswamy completely disagreed with Steve Bannon, and Elon Musk also was on Vivek's side. So there's so many fault lines in the conservative movement, in the libertarians and everything, that the left, if you don't walk in lockstep, they boot you out. Why do you think that every single Democrat sat on their hands and failed to applaud during Trump's State of the Union? They are a cult.
Right now, they're holding them to account.
That's an important but separate issue. I just want to finish the point, and we could talk about Congress, which is that in the Republican Party, we have immense and vocal and public spats all the time. I think you would agree. We fight about foreign policy. Look at Ukraine, right? We're talking about primary challenging some of these senators that were meeting Zelensky last week. The Democrat Party would never do that. Now, I think that is a symptom of an underlying thing. We're constantly trying to find the approximation of what truth is. We're trying to use dialogue towards, hey, who's right? What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And it's by no coincidence that out of the long-form podcasting genres, the top 10, 8 of them are conservative or center-right. Rogan, Megyn Kelly, Theo Von, the Paul brothers,
Shapiro.
our program, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh. There's a singular one on the left, which is Pod Save America, which is just like a bunch of Obama bros agreeing with each other for 90 minutes and saying that we're not very smart. And, and so anyway, but I
appreciate it. No, but objective truth, right? I mean, you just dominate this media. I mean, it's medium. But but it's interesting. You're making a deeper argument that we're not, and you didn't say it in a maligning way, but that we're just not capable because we're not hardwired.
Well, I think it's
to be able to participate in
Well,
this.
I think that it's two things. Number one, your upbringing in college campuses does not foster debate like it used to. It just doesn't. It's that it's about silencing the critic and the elevation of the victim. So you do not have the practice of robust having to defend your position. It's very monolithic. It's very centralized. It's very top-down. It's quasi-authoritarian. And then secondly, I would just say that the philosophy on the worldview, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys have adopted is that thou which is oppressed will get the most points. You guys don't have thou that has the best idea wins. And because of that, you guys have an elevation of like, hey, we're just going to have a small subset of a minoritarian hectoring hall monitor assistant principal vibe of people telling you that you're not allowed to say.
That's Elizabeth Warren, by the way. Grandma Karen.
These words, and you can't say that. And we call that political correctness, which in and of itself is hyper-authoritarian. So if you seek to understand why young men are rebelling, it's like, no, I'm not going to go along with this anymore. Like maybe I'm going to say, for an example, maybe I'm going to send out a stupid tweet when I'm 17 years old. When I'm 26, I shouldn't have to get fired because of that, right?
100%. I've never liked this cancel.
No, I'm glad to hear you say that.
I remember back when I was lieutenant governor, I think Bill Maher was trying to get on the UC campus or something. They were saying Bill Maher was too conservative voice, and we called that out at the time. It completely insane. But it's equally insane that people are boycotting Bud Light. I mean, how is that not called
First
out?
of all, I don't drink.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, like,
you don't drink at all?
I mean, no.
By the way, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You don't?
No.
Never have?
I have, yeah. A couple years
What
ago.
happened? What, a couple of years ago you stopped?
I stopped, yeah.
Why'd you stop?
I just wanted to be more successful.
I love that. What were you drinking?
Napa Valley wine.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Here we go. Right?
That's because Gavin Newsom has Plump Jack Winery in Napa Valley that, by the way, was able to stay open during COVID times. Gee, I wonder how that happened.
Stop my Lord and Savior in vain like that.
By the way, forgive me. I deeply respect. And by the way, do respect your faith. I'm serious.
It's like the fourth time. I mean, come on.
Come on.
No, but no, I don't drink. But yeah,
he's not genuine.
But first of all, we have the agency to boycott whatever we want. But understand.
No, but I mean, in that cancel culture in reverse, I mean, a lot of cancel culture on the right now.
Something completely different. First of all, cancel culture is someone in power using their power to cancel somebody that doesn't have power. That's cancel culture. Time out. Hold on. Well, Bud Light was people that don't have a lot of power, consumers using their agency to say, no, powerful corporation, I'm not going to voluntarily associate with you. But cancel culture has always been the incumbent person with power, a governor, a principal, a boss, a CEO, a corporate board, going against the weaker. What we did with Bud Light was just a bunch of decentralized folks doing a good old-fashioned boycott. Completely different.
But a boycott, boycott is not, I mean, well, there's boycotting speakers, there's boycotting, that is a derivative of cancel.
But the culmination of cancel culture is
boycotting speakers is not going to the event. Canceling speakers is going to the event and using the heckler's veto, which is what the left does, using bullhorns to try to shut them up, yelling, threatening violence. That is canceling a speaker. That's a big difference between that and boycotting them.
Somebody has a power position, wrongly canceling,
I
filing,
appreciate
terminating.
that perspective. So let's go back to Democrats being totally incompetent, incapable of spending 30, let alone 45 to an hour having a conversation broadly on podcasts.
I said you're becoming the exception.
In the process of becoming,
it's like yet. Becoming Gavin, like becoming Michelle, Jesus, right?
Becoming. But so what? I mean, who do you? Are the Democrats you do? Forget literally any Democrats you admire out there right now. I mean, even beyond just the podcast thing, that you look and say, Jesus, there's hope. Forgive me. There's hope. We can edit that out.
No, I don't care. You can keep it in. I used to have respect for Bernie on his anti-war stance, and now he's a complete neocon.
I was going to ask you about Bernie.
He's a complete neocon now, so he's not there. Democrats I respect. Bobby Kennedy type? I respect. Tulsi Gabbard.
Why are you laughing? Why are you smiling?
Because they're on our team now. Because you guys kicked out your best people.
That's
it's
true.
People that were into this.
RFK,
is a great point,
Tulsi.
though, Governor. Is that Bobby Kennedy was a heterodox opinion on a thing that a lot of people were concerned about. Get him out. He's an anti-vaxxer. Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard, who was an anti-war. Get her out. She's a Russian agent. Yeah. Do you guys see?
Do you realize that Tulsi Gabbard was put on a list, a Safe Skies list or whatever it was called, when she criticized Kamala Harris, I believe it was, and everywhere that she went on any plane, she got extra security, and we as taxpayers paid for U.S. Marshals or federal marshals to be on the plane watching over Tulsi Gabbard. This is how the Democrats weaponized, and that is the correct use of the term, their power to punish those who disagree with them. Why do you think that people are leaving the Democrat Party, Gavin?
You have an unhealthy purification process where eventually you're left with just a 31% approval rating and a bunch of people that are talking to each other. And meanwhile, we're the ones that have Democrats in our cabinet winning the electoral majority vote, because there needs to be said, if Democrats are serious about being a majority party ever again, when somebody has a disagreement, for example, if there's a pro-life Democrat, is there a place for a pro-life Democrat in the Democrat Party?
No, I mean, there should be.
Okay, that's
on principle. There should
not.
be. Absolutely,
that's a big
deeply
step.
held personal point of view. God bless.
I agree. Not every party or Democrat official would say that, right?
He's so fake.
And so certain states have different opinions on that.
And I say this as one of the biggest champions for reproductive freedom on the planet. Yeah,
trust me, I know that I know. But the issue though is that is a one-stop purity test. Like, we have pro-choice Republicans.
There was a Sister
Susan
Soldier
Collins
moment.
Is a pro-choice Republican.
No, and Trump himself decided to pivot a little bit.
Yeah,
did a
he's more pro-choice than
I
am, like, for sure. But what I'm saying though is what you see in the Republican Party is the best, in my opinion, culmination of modern politics, and doesn't get appreciated. Look at that ideological diversity. We have people that, they want to go to war with every country that says something bad against us. And then we have people that are far more dovish, like Rand Paul. But that is a better, more, dare I say, diverse picture. You could say diversity is our strength.
Oh, look at you. Look at Charlie Kirk. Diversity is strength. I mean, I want to end the podcast right there. But first,
I said you could say.
You could say. I want to. Do we have ultimate editing here? I'm going to.
No, you better not edit any of this for the record.
We're not going to edit any of this. And by the way, no reason to edit any of this, despite my use of inappropriate words here and there. Let me ask you, just on the Democratic Party side. Forgive me. I do want to just look So our effort to get out of the wilderness, on the woke culture wars, on some of these issues, on providing a more diverse campus, dare I say, of opinion, and pulling people in. But what else do you feel this party? I mean, you had a point that the Republican Party is now going to be the dominant and Senate party.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I don't have that kind of pride. I'm saying right now we are the ascendant worldview, but we could screw this up easily. And we might be. You have to have the humility to say that. Right. But like as of the recording of this podcast, we have a majority approval rating, won the electoral. I mean, all that stuff.
Right. And in both houses, I mean,
but we could screw it up, and you guys could adjust or adapt.
Okay, so this was the question that I'm not articulating very effectively. But I remember so many of the similar contours of this conversation we were having in 2004 and 2005. We just got shellacked, both houses of Congress, Republicans. You had a Republican president that won the popular vote, the last Republican president to win the popular vote. And 2 years later,
before Donald Trump,
you had Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Right. 4 years later, you had 53% of the vote, the highest since 64.
It's conceivable that could happen now. I don't say that's impossible.
So what if you were in my camp? What is
I'm not going to give you my best advice. I'll give you like the B or C level advice.
Okay, give me the B plus.
All right, because the secret stuff I'm not.
No, when you got
negotiating, I like it.
Why don't we go right to there?
The secret for
what is it? Is it technical or is it?
It's all of it. I could design your presidential run in a way where you would win.
I'm not talking about a president. We're not talking about presidential run. This is not about that.
No.
You got. By the way, you guys are so obsessed
exactly about
with the idea that every goddamn thing I do, I said it again. Yeah, I said it again because I needed your emotional reaction. That everything I do is framed in that context.
Because it's the only thing you care about is your own political ascendancy. You are going to run for president of 2028, which is why you're trying to moderate your views right now.
Come on, Trump derangement syndrome. I think you got one with California and me.
First of all, it's not new to have someone from California run for the presidency. We just beat someone from California presidency. California is to politics to the Democrat Party as Florida is to our party. You guys have the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, right? You have a lot of the ascendant political voices come out of the state. So it's not derangement syndrome. It's knowing your enemy and looking at the horizon and understanding what's coming. But anyway, if I were to give you or somebody advice, I'll give you the B and C level stuff, which is very simple. You have to go to war with your own party on 3 major things. You got to say, we are not going to do this illegal immigration thing anymore, which includes, are you going to work with ICE?
We do work with ICE.
Okay, great.
By the way, I want to make sure people can know this.
Sanctuary state.
We have been. I, in fact, directly, we actually put out the data. I actually reached out to the administration saying, are you not aware that California coordinates and cooperates with all CDCR releases over 10,000?
Explain the sanctuary state thing then. What is the difference?
You've got the statewide sanctuary state and you've got
Governor
local
Brown
sanctuary
signed
cities.
in, not you.
Yeah, which in the statewide framework allows us to work as it relates to issues of criminals and coordinating the release of criminals from our state prison system.
I'm sorry, there have been murders in the state of California after they failed to hand over criminals that were arrested to ICE because of sanctuary policies. Gavin, whatever he's doing, either California has changed its laws, which I doubt, or he's doing some form of gaslighting.
With ICE on the deportation. We've done that over 10,000 times since I've been governor. We're not denying access. We're not denying coordination.
I'm glad to hear that. That's why I asked.
For criminals. Sanctuary policy was never...
I would say if you break into the country illegally, 8 U.S.C. 1325 is a breaking of federal law, right?
It's civil, not criminal. But
it is a federal law.
I get it.
Civil, but I'm saying, so by the way, if you're serious about moderating the party, 8 U.S.C. 1325, vast majority of Americans... Okay, so let me just go through it. Vast majority of Americans want mass deportations. It's just a thing.
Until they don't.
Well, okay.
That's my humble opinion. Until they don't.
Okay.
Someone who's been here 10 years.
You might be right.
Paying taxes. I don't buy it.
You might. Well,
but at the moment, you're right.
You might be right.
The numbers bear it out.
We'll see. Number 2, we mentioned the trans stuff. It's an affront to all of our senses. It's out of control.
Yeah. You don't believe in it fundamentally. It's not just sports. It's not style. You just don't. I mean, back to
Charlie Kirk's views are separate than the political advice I'm giving. But if you'd like me to, we could do a whole.
No, I get it.
Charlie Kirk asked me anything, and you could show up to Cal State Northridge on Thursday.
I've got 25 TikToks of what your feelings are. So actually, that was a question I didn't need to ask.
If you want it, it's fine. I just don't think that's the best use of our time. But on the political advice is that Americans increasingly believe that their good-heartedness and charitable nature towards the LGBT issue has gone overblown, especially with youth sports, youth curriculum, and the chemical castration of our kids when it comes to this medical therapy. And you seem that you want to really, I encourage you, Governor, to learn about some of the butchery under the guise of healthcare that is happening under chemical castration in this state and in other states. We don't spend a lot of time on that, but the American people are overwhelmingly against it.
Yeah.
They're overwhelming against it.
No, I think we have to be more sensitized to that.
Youth should be off limits. I think that's the political direction things are going.
Yeah.
You might be right on deportations. I know I'm right on this. I know that this issue is picking up steam. There is no good counter to it. The CAS report, the United Kingdom CAS report, the NHS came out and said there's no good reason to ever operate surgically on a young person. Puberty's not the problem. Puberty's the solution. I think I encourage.
I'm not an expert in this, but I appreciate your broader.
But I'm saying politically, it's a super turbocharged issue that is kicking the tail of Democrats. The third one, though, is quality of life. Is quality of life.
I agree with you on this one, especially.
But like, I mean, look.
No,
I know
homeless encampments out of control, unacceptable.
Yes,
but
it was under your watch that this took hold, Gavin. I lived in Los Angeles until the end of 2017 when we decided to move because I came home from a year abroad and found homeless littered everywhere. My wife walking down the street pushing our baby stroller and a man walking towards her with his hands down his pants with his cock out, muttering to himself. Another time, somebody from across the street with my wife with the baby yelled, "Bitch," at her for no reason. These people were insane. You could go to the park and you could not find a place to sit because too close was somebody who was homeless, camped out there, who you would view with suspicion. This was at the end of 2017 that we observed all this. And it's only gotten worse. And that's on your watch, Gavin. You had a plan to eradicate homelessness from San Francisco when you were the mayor there. And all it's done is spread to the rest of the state. You are an ineffective politician who virtue signals and does nothing of tangible value.
Crime. You know where I'm going with this. Why is it you were able to clean it up for Xi Jinping, but you can't clean it up?
Guys, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. By the way, you guys weaponized that. I saw that on 25 things.
Again, weaponized it. No, it's illustrated. It's shining a light.
I will happily revert back to your
Can I have the streets as clean as Xi Jinping?
In this case, weaponized.
No, not weaponized. You, in fact, stated the fact that all these important people were coming. Yeah, well, that was part of the reason that we cleaned it up momentarily because you wanted to make a good impression on your boss, Xi Jinping.
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true because it's true.
Weaponized.
Can I get the Xi Jinping streets back?
Ridiculous. Give me a break.
No, but Governor, with all due respect, I saw a beautiful picture of San Francisco that looked like Singapore.
By the way,
and then Xi Jinping leaves, and the Walking Dead come back.
By the way, it was APAC. You had dozens and dozens of foreign leaders, and California is not San Francisco. But I am the governor of California, not the mayor of California, not the mayor of San Francisco.
You were the mayor, but I just want to understand why is it?
It can be cleaned up for them. Why can't it be cleaned up in general? Because you don't want it cleaned up. Because you don't have the political impetus to make it so.
We have to clean it up. But you have to admit, it's emblematic of something that if enough important people show up, it can get clean. So why not make it clean all the time?
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true because it's true.
That's exactly by the way, that's my energy. I think you've missed a lot of my press conferences. I've been saying that to all these mayors. State vision is realized at the local level. It's about accountability, transparency. If you can't clean up the streets, we're going to redirect the money.
I hope the new mayor can do that,
crystal clear.
He seems to be more moderate than the other.
Great progress is being made. By the way, what's going on with homelessness in all these red states? You're seeing it through the roof. Went up 18% across the country.
I'm not here defending every red state or what we're doing, right?
But I'm making the point. This is hardly unique to California.
I'm sure there's a lot of governors and mayors. Quality of life's huge, right?
Yeah.
And the housing crisis, of course, came up. What are we going to do to help young people buy more homes? Do we actually agree on something? This actually was the few moments where we agreed on something. Gavin Newsom and I find common ground.
And then, look, the number one thing, which I know you're going to agree with, and I'm sure you'll have a super slick response, right? That's
not slick.
About half true.
Yeah,
that's all you are.
Which is
about three-quarters.
The cost of housing. Average home in California, $850,000.
I like what you said about BlackRock.
But
that was interesting to me.
I think that is, but again, that's not a majority of house purchasing. About 1 in 4 houses are bought by private equity. Would you agree to say that BlackRock should not be able to own homes in California?
I think, and then turning around and renting
it's
them.
insane, right?
This is a huge problem across the country.
You should propose a bill in the California.
Just for the record, the problem is that the federal government during COVID times wanted the housing market to be buttressed. So they gave BlackRock a basically interest-free loan with the mandate to go out and buy housing. Knowing that they're going to print more money, BlackRock can do that without any fear that they're going to lose money, because the money that they're borrowing is merely going to be inflated, and thus the price of housing is going to increase. Whenever you have inflation, the price of scarce commodities goes up as the level of printed money rises, and thus prices rise with it. BlackRock had a zero risk loan to go out and buy all these houses, and thus the average person who would want to buy a house for themselves is being boxed out by the federal government and the way that they allocate the printed money and the tax dollars to their cronies, to big business. And that is the problem.
We've had one. It didn't get very far last year, and there's more conversations.
A $10 trillion fund shouldn't be able to come in and buy
But it's not just
homes.
BlackRock specifically. I
No,
mean, this is
it's
what's
the
happening in
idea
this
of
space.
mass asset managers that have $1 billion, $50 billion asset under management are now competing against our college grad from
by the way,
Cal State Fullerton.
I love that you say this. And by the way, just in that spirit, don't you agree one of the Doge things should be dealing with the $1.5 billion of subsidies on carried interest?
Oh, I carried interest, I think, is a huge problem. And by the way, President Trump has proposed in his tax bill to get rid of.
He proposes it all the time, but it doesn't actually.
Hold on, but I mean, Joe Biden didn't get rid of carried interest. That is the holy grail of private equity. You know that, right? Carried interest. I mean,
I get it, but let's go back to housing.
And by the way, you're going to have a revolt in Palo Alto if you get rid of carried interest.
No, I should be careful on that.
They're going to light torches and run to Sacramento.
On the issue of housing, you couldn't be more right. It's the original sin in the state of California: affordability. Period. Full stop. And it has more impact on the issue of homelessness than any other issue because of the cost of living. By the way, we had 180.
That's bullshit. You think that the cost of living is why homeless people exist? This is the same thing that you did on Adam Carolla 10 years ago. Homeless exist because they're schizophrenic and drug addicts and out on the street because they've lost all their chances to sleep on somebody's couch or to restart their life because they're addicted to drugs. You want to make it about cost of living? That is a false representation of the homeless situation throughout the planet.
2005, 20 years ago. On the streets and homeless in our point in time count. So this is hardly unique to
I'm not saying it's
modern
unique,
California,
but help me understand,
it's been a long-term issue. And housing is at the core.
No, we agree. We agree on the problem, but here, help me understand this. You guys control the House, the Senate with supermajorities. You control everything. Why can't you fix it? You said you were going to build 3.5 million homes. You're building like 111,000 a year.
Well, there was something called a pandemic that may have had a little impact.
Go ahead and blame it on that.
Issues of interest rates may have had a little impact on housing production across the country.
You guys are still outpacing every other state.
But hold on.
In Los Angeles, they were building little tiny shacks that were like built for 15,000, and the city came in and demanded that they be torn down. It was just built privately, and instead they want to replace them with units that cost like 600 or 800,000, which was more than our house in Nevada cost, which was a beautiful 4-bedroom on 0.4 acres. That was $505,000 for that. And for these little shacks, they are bilking the taxpayers for $800,000 when it could be built much more cheaply because the wrong people were building them, and thus the grift, thus the jobs that were California subsidized were being axed out.
Hold on.
Hawaii.
42 CEQA reform bills created a housing accountability unit.
Has it worked?
And we're making big progress.
Okay.
We've done all the rezoning. We've been
had 8 years
pounding
to do
in
it.
this space. There's no administration in modern California history that's done more to reform the housing space and the regulatory space as it relates to the issue of housing. The biggest challenge right now.
It's impossible to build anything in California because there are all sorts of laws that prevent you from importing like rock from a quarry out of state that doesn't adhere to the ultra strict environmental laws of California.
This NIMBYism, the biggest challenge we have is local planning and zoning, and that's why we've been very aggressive.
NIMBY is a disaster. We agree on that.
And so I have a YIMBY mindset on all this stuff. I'm in the front lines of this. Your friends, and they are your friends down in Huntington Beach that I'm suing. They're conservatives
or what? Or
the whole
city
crew,
council.
They love you. They
literally the MAGA faithful.
You're 99.9%.
Who's living who in rent free and whose head? One of the smaller towns.
We're suing them because of their rank NIMBYism. We have been very aggressive
because you're trying to force mass housing that is subsidized by California in jurisdictions that have already been built out as single family units. I've heard this story from Huntington Beach. You are trying to impose upon them. And if you want to build such housing, then build it out in the middle of nowhere if you want that. It's not the government's responsibility to build housing. It's to get out of the way that private industry that can do it much more cheaply.
Yeah. I'm waiting for one big thing we all are waiting for, and I think it had perhaps one of the biggest impacts that we don't focus on enough in the last election. That was interest rates. As interest rates,
I believe they will come down.
And you're going to see an explosion of housing production.
Well,
I'm very confident in that in California.
Yeah, but you also might see an increase in housing prices, of course.
Well, to me, it's
all about supply, right?
Econ 101, supply and demand.
Yeah, it's just the biggest issue.
It's been our biggest.
California and Hawaii have the two highest housing prices in the country. Hawaii has an obvious excuse. They only have so much land.
No,
you guys don't have a lack of land.
By the way,
right?
I haven't been governor for a century, okay? I mean, Jesus.
No, I
mean,
know.
we've been six years.
And
by the way, no excuse. I get it.
You can't take credit for all the
governor's office.
Number one AI, number one nanotechnology.
Well, the AI is
but you also got to take responsibility for some of the problems.
More novel. I'm take a little more credit on the generative AI. 32 of the top 50 market cap companies.
But I'm saying you have to balance both the credit and the and the blame. But I appreciate it. But quality of life, right? So we can both agree. So when I talk to a college kid, one of the reasons they saw Trump as a vessel for a better life is that under President Trump, those first 4 years, we saw a material increase in their livelihood, wages, easier to buy a home. 4 years later, just the facts are, the average wage to be able to own a home in LA, to be able to own a home.
Oh, yeah, insane.
It used to be $75,000 a year. Now it's $145,000 a year. So, what it does, and this is, again, it's creating this kind of belief system of Russian serfs of a generation that will never have the material American dream that their parents once enjoyed.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a full circle on this conversation where you began by identifying.
We'll circle back.
No, but it's a point. The point you're making, Scott Galloway and others have been making as it relates to this generational theft.
Yes.
He's spot on this, and I think there's so much validity to you recognizing that problem and so diagnosing is one thing, but
President Trump as well. He deserves credit.
And I mean, I think he deserves.
I mean, I'm going to get you to say the words.
By the way, I just spent almost 90 minutes with him in the Oval Office a couple of weeks ago.
Isn't he the greatest?
I think it was the first Democrat invited in Trump 2.0.
I mean, you got to admit, there's something magical that guy. I mean, Joe Biden couldn't do 5 minutes with you.
By the way, I did almost 90 minutes with Biden right before he left in the Oval.
Did he remember?
By the way, that'd be a hell of a book. 180 minutes. I should do a book of that bookmark.
Was he
two experiments? By the way, he 100% was.
Oh, come on, Governor.
Just a fact. It's just you can.
Do you think there was any
liar?
Okay.
No, seriously. You went around the country being like, I'll take him at 100.
There was one exception, and
it was the one debate.
No. Before the debate, I was about to say. And that was the big fundraiser down in LA where I saw a different person.
The Clooney.
And Clooney called
Jack
that
Black,
out.
right?
But it was
one.
How come I was saying in 2019, 2020 that Biden was suffering from obvious dementia and nobody else could pick it up on the Democrat side and only sane people were? This is just gaslighting and lying on your part.
It was not. That was, but so much of that focus was, all right, he just got back from Europe. But that was the one time. We don't need to get it.
But I just say, Governor, just on that one topic, we saw with our own eyes for 3 years, and the media told us, no, he's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then we saw the debate, and look, it makes us not trust our leaders when we say everyone is perfectly fine. The emperor's fine.
Are you seeing any mental decline in Donald Trump right now?
No, I see the more sharp acuity. You tell me, you sat with him in the Oval Office for 90 minutes. The guy has a memory of an elephant.
I'm asking. I mean, I know. I'm just asking your personal.
No, of course not. No, I think he's.
How often do you talk to Trump? By the way,
once or twice a week.
Does he check in for advice, or is he you?
A
give
little
him
bit
advice?
of both. It depends if there's something I want to talk to him about. Yeah. But I mean, he's just a machine. He'll take every call. You got to give him credit for that.
Isn't it amazing?
He'll take every call thing's big, right?
It's amazing.
And he'll listen to every idea. He'll joust it out. He'll talk about it.
Right.
He always goes back to, what did I promise the voters? Look,
what was the last idea you gave him?
The last idea I gave him?
Mr. President, here's what you need, or here's the thought. Here's my observation.
Actually, it was interesting. I said, I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. We already have California, and we have enough libs in our country.
Jesus, on that, Charlie Kirk.
Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain.
No, on that, I
Governor,
just want to thank you.
This is Gavin Newsom.
This has been a Gavin Newsom production.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Or whatever. Jesus Christ. Don't get over it.
So what do we get out of this discussion? First of all, Charlie Kirk is a really good debater. He's very on point. Gavin Newsom, you could see how many times he faked his laugh. He's just a disingenuous person. It's just something that he's practiced, and the road is paved towards such reactions for him. It's something that he does unconsciously. Gavin is obviously moving towards the center, attempting to run to that location to bolster his 2028 bid. And everything that he's doing today is geared towards his political ascendancy that he so craves and desires. I would put him as the front runner for the 2028 Democrat nominee. They would have been better off with him instead of Kamala. So thank God that they could not skip over Kamala Harris as the DEI candidate and had to run that retard. But nevertheless, Gavin Newsom will be a very viable contender for the 2028 Democrat nominee. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and God bless, and thumb up the video, subscribe if you haven't.